As a listener of this podcast, I'm sure you understand that we do things a little bit different around here at Vendoroo for sure in this content game. This is no different. This is a very unique podcast episode in that I've been talking about Bill Davy now for probably about like a month or two, the great success that he's been having, how he calls himself the AI Czar in his company. And, recently he sent me a text saying that he reached 97% maintenance automation. 97% of his work orders were completely coordinated through AI without human involvement, without his involvement. So about a month ago, we had a leadership offsite, right? This is our CEO and our leadership team, all of us together in the Bay Area in Sonoma. And we invited Bill to be a guest via Zoom. And we did like a group interview to really just understand the success he's having, what he's done different, his approach to it, so we could share it with the world. I want you to listen not just for the extraordinary results here. This is not an advertisement, but this is a true insight into how you onboard AI as a teammate. It's not the same as learning to use a software. It's different. And Bill's approach says it all. So enjoy this conversation with Bill Davy. Super likable guy, super smart guy, who I've promised is going to be a star in our solar system. This is his big reveal. Enjoy this conversation with Bill Davy at Happy Homes. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. All right, Bill, let me just kind of set the table, man. So I have not shut up about you since we hung out. Here's where we're at as a company, right? In early tech adoption, have you heard of the concept of crossing the chasm?
Yes.
Right. So we're there. We're like 1 foot in the chasm, 1 foot on the prior ledge. And we've realized that there is a segment of the market that are early tech adopters and visionaries that have come for transformation and big change. And the next big kind of like bulkhead that we need to be able to take down are totally different. They're pragmatists, right? So they're folks that they don't want wholesale change, they want incremental change. They don't want upside, they want safety, right? And what we see in you is a guy who you came in, like you have a very visionary mindset, but the way that you have approached your role in leveraging Vendoroo to like redefine who you are and what you can do in your company is a very pragmatist approach. Like it feels like you've really dialed in this kind of, how do I start with this? How do I get to a certain threshold so I can, treat it a different way? And then how do I incorporate this into my day-to-day life and doing really well in it? So we'd love to just kind of hear from you to start. When you first, I also gave everybody kind of like your background, right? Like Lowe's home improvement guy, hadn't been in property management, came over to take over operations, and then you went out and sourced like an ideal solution. And I'll let everybody kind of ask you questions, but if we could start with when you first bought Vendoroo, the promise that attracted you to it versus what you found, and how you had to adapt, and like how it's different for you to execute on the back end now versus what you thought you were getting into. If you could just kind of top of mind talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one like I talk in analogies a lot, so like I may give you an analogy. I'm going to give you an analogy here. It's similar to the idea that when you're thinking about buying a new car, I drive a Ram 1500. You rode in it. I've been driving that since 2014. I've had 3 different trucks, and I know what the Ram is capable of, and I like it, and that's why I drive it. But when I was switching from into the Ram back in 2014, I was driving a 1999 Jeep Cherokee, the old box style. So I was going from something, that was easily maneuvered. I could whip in and out of spaces, had super tight turning radius and so forth. And I wanted to go into the truck because I just wanted more room. I've always liked trucks. And then I needed the new Cherokee that they had come out with. The cabin space just wasn't what I wanted. So I went out and I test drove a bunch of trucks, and the Ram was what I ultimately settled on. Moving into Vendoroo is very similar in that sense, in that, I can read all about it. I can hear you guys talk about it. I can hear other people talk about it. But until I actually get to use it and play with it and work with it, I don't really know what I'm getting into. But based off of, the research that I did behind all the companies that were offering similar products as Vendoroo or similar solutions as you guys were offering, it just felt like that was the one that was going to be on the cutting edge moving forward. And it just seemed like the smart play to make because of what, in my lifetime, what I've seen technologically, where you're never at a resting point within technology. You're always growing beyond where you are currently. And that's what excited me about Vendoroo. I know I highlighted for you, Pablo, when we spoke when you were in Charleston that, I looked heavily at Property Meld, and they do the maintenance portion of it very well. They bought AI to bring in and integrate into their system, but they have to integrate it. Your AI is built into your system, which means it's a part of what is already in place. You don't have to adapt it, which means that transition is going to be slightly smoother. And when we went live with Vendoroo, again, it was one of those situations where, okay, we're live. Let's see what happens. It's just the creative mindset of I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm willing to find out. Odd story again, and random stories will pop into my head. My family name is Davy, and my one of my great relatives was a scientist in England, and he actually discovered a use for nitrous oxide, all by ingesting nitrous oxide. But he was willing to take that. He was willing to take that step. That's how it started being used in dental work, how it started being used in other areas to help with those sorts of things rather than just popping somebody with a hammer and hoping they're knocked out long enough to pull a tooth. It takes that a leap of faith, if you will, just to be able to say, you know what, I see what you're offering and I want to try it.
Yeah, so that's the visionary purchasing decision, right? Like that is quintessential. You just described it to a T, right? Which is why you're this persona. I think you're now on the back end, or correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you are now in the back end of having a very practical understanding of how it actually works.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through, all right, you jumped in, you knew you were going to have to figure it out. Can you talk me through certain inflection points of aha moments of figuring out of like, oh, this is how I'm really supposed to use this thing. This is the first moment that I felt like I was, oh, I'm winning right now and I know I'm winning with this. And maybe moments of like, oh shit, am I ever gonna?
Well, this isn't as good as I thought it would be,
Yeah.
or this is weak in these areas.
Yeah.
So I've talked with Tyler a little bit about it, you about it, and Juan as well about it. Where like the first 2 weeks, like I was like an overprotective dad, very much hands on, looking at like paying attention to every work order that came in and seeing what was being like how it was being triaged. Like I wanted to know what the steps were, what pieces were missing, how I could help direct it, because I believe your tagline for the product is the last hire you'll ever have to make. And that's how I looked at it. Like I wasn't looking at it as it's this AI program that's going to take care of everything for me. It's somebody that needed to be trained and taught and shown things so that way we could get it dialed into where I didn't feel like I was having to look at everything. And like that was the first 2 weeks of simply just me being hands-on as much as possible, providing direction, basically acting as a manager for Vendoroo to say, in this scenario, look at this, in this scenario, look at that, and feeding the information of my experience into Vendoroo. And it felt like at 2 weeks, that's when Vendoroo kind of started to catch up to speed with me as far as looking at what I was looking at or asking the questions that I might ask of a situation. Like,
let me pause you right there. So for 2 weeks, you were looking at the software 24/7. Did you have like 4 hour blocks in your day where you're just going through everything?
No, so how I was approaching it was we use AppFolio for our maintenance, and I was in and out of AppFolio and in and out of Vendoroo consistently. Like I was toggling between two different tabs, taking a look at everything to understand what was going on. How do I need to tweak this? Do I need to adjust the way my vendors are set up? Do I have all my vendors lined up where I want them, or is there a plug and play vendor that I could possibly move into another bracket that would help me out? And that's what happened at the 2 week window was there was a situation where a tenant just moved into a property and the HVAC system had backed up. Well, it had just gotten hot, so all the all the HVAC companies that we had lined up were booked out for 2-3 days, and this guy was really concerned that he was going to have some damage. So I pivoted and just reached out to one of my vendors that I knew would be able to handle it, but Vendoroo wouldn't have known that. I just had I went outside of the box. And I thought about it, and then after I did it, and the guy's name was Carter's Handyman Service, and he was able to take care of everything I needed. After that, I went back into Vendoroo, and I plugged him back in. I plugged him into HVAC and put him as an emergency list, so that way, in the future, if there's a situation where all of my HVAC vendors can't get out, I've got somebody that can get out there that day, if not, the next day, like being quicker about it. But to not have that moment, I would have never been able to say, here's an idea of how I can, alleviate the stress that these situations cause. Because when your AC is out and it's hot, everybody's irritable and cranky. But also, how can we solve the problem without having to completely tear it down? Let's find an incremental tweak that we need to do. And that was the tweak that at 2 weeks, I was like, okay, so if all I need to do is feed Vendoroo this information, I no longer need to drive the car for Vendoroo. Vendoroo needs to start driving the car, and I need to watch and just keep my eyes on the wheel. I think the virtual summit that you and Jay Berube had back in January, talked about the different types of AI. And that's one of the things I've been keying off of is this AI isn't here to replace me. This AI is here to make my job easier. And as we've gone through the first 2 weeks and even into the next month, where I was less hands-on and more just kind of in the background, keeping an eye on it, taking a look, offering suggestions and so forth. Like, I've watched in that month since that, the first 2 weeks, where suddenly the background, the AI and the people supporting the AI from Vendoroo were starting to pick up on things that I was looking for to be able to make the calls on the spot. In fact, it was at the 6 week mark where I was getting ready to I was getting ready to recommend a plumber to go out to a leak. And Vendoroo assigned an HVAC company because they picked up on the fact that this was more than likely an HVAC system leaking and not a plumbing leak, not a busted pipe or anything like that. Sure enough, they were on the money with it. And hey, they learned, they picked it up. They solved the problem that normally I would have had to solve. I didn't have to spend, an hour or so communicating with the tenant. Everything was handled and the tenant was happy and satisfied. And at that point, I was like, okay, great. Now I can flip over to receptionist or flip over to whatever else we're gonna be working on to be able to get to have that peace of mind to know that as the questions arise, if there is a need for me, they will reach out to me. But if there's not a need for me, it's basically like, we've got it. Don't worry. Do what you need to do. It's similar to what when I was in management at Lowe's, where if a store manager walked up to me and was like, "Hey, we got a visit coming," I'm like, "All right, go take care of who you need to take care of. I know what you're asking right now without you saying anything else. My area will look good. I got it. Move." And that's kind of what I felt like Vendoroo was saying to me when they're like, "Hey, we got an HVAC company on the way. Don't worry." And I was like, "All right, great.
I got a question.
What you got?"
So if another property manager or maintenance coordinator of another company comes to you and asks you, what is it gonna do for me? Like, okay, not in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but moving forward, how is it gonna change my day to day? What's the biggest value, what's the biggest change it's gonna give me?
That's a great question because that is actually the process I'm in right now. What Vendoroo has allowed me to do and will allow other maintenance coordinators and property management companies in general to be able to do is maintenance by design is a reactive sector of property management. You can't predict when an AC unit's going to break. You can't predict when a refrigerator is going to break. It's all a guessing game, how good it was built, how long it's going to last, how well it was maintained. But if you're not having to focus on the day-to-days of, hey, I've got, a loose step or, simple fixes, there's a leak, I got a running toilet. I don't have to pay attention to that stuff. And I can start to investigate where we might be able to get a little proactive and be ahead of the curve. And I say ahead of the curve only because it's always good to be ahead, but I truly don't believe you'll ever be ahead in maintenance. The only thing you'll ever be is even. But being even in maintenance is where you want to be, because you're not having to, like, this summer is a great example. Like, we had the month of July was pretty much 95 degrees or higher all month long. Heat index into the 110s, 120s, which means all these HVAC systems are going crazy. And I think I've replaced like 6 in the month of July. But at the same time, I also started seeing some termite issues in some of the properties where the property owners forgot to get termite bonds on their properties. So I had to pivot while doing all of that, trying to get ahead. And it's allowed me to see that, one of the main benefits of having a system like Vendoroo in place is that now that I've experienced, hey, termite issues are going to come around, maybe we do need to send out an update, a heads up to property owners at the first of the year. Don't forget to update or redo your termite bond, or get a termite bond to protect your property. I've got a termite bond on my house because Terminix owns the termites and any damage they may cause. So why wouldn't a property owner want something that's going to protect that? But if I'm too focused on the day to day, I don't have the time to go to the property owners and say, hey, last season was pretty rough termite wise. You guys might want to consider putting termite bonds on your properties, or just having them routinely inspected. So that way it's not, oh crap, I've got to put $50,000 into a property that I was only using as passive income. And now I've got to dump basically everything I've saved for the last year from this property into the property just to get it habitable again. So that's what I see the value from Vendoroo is. I'm not gonna be behind the 8 ball all the time because of Vendoroo. Like, it's gonna give me that ability to look around and see where I can bring a different value. When we're working with a company that is putting together where they put together an inspection, an interior and exterior inspection, along with like 7-8 services that most HOAs are going to want you to have done every year. So now I'm going to be able to take that to the property owners, offer them the 2 inspections, interior, exterior, and then the 6-7 services, all for $800, when the 6-7 services would have run them anywhere from about $1,200 to $2,400, depending on who's doing it. So I'm going to be able to offer them that savings within that, all because I didn't have to sit there and, try and figure out each and every work order and assign it out to the vendor and get the vendor to go out or communicate with the tenant to find out if the tenant was happy, or to find out extra information. That Vendoroo's doing that for me, and it's allowing me to think beyond just this moment.
Bill, I got it. That's awesome, man. I feel like we all want to give each other high fives right now because of everything you're saying. If you've been following along here, I think it's pretty clear that the effect Vendoroo has had on Bill's operation and his career is pretty significant. I think this is a really big moment for us here at the Vendoroo team, understanding the benefits that this is really providing, and that this is really happening across our customer base, and would love for you to feel that same thing. So if you really haven't given Vendoroo a shot, or maybe you did and you're still paying attention to, because you understand that we were working out some kinks earlier, where the product is today is truly leaps and bounds to where it was a year ago. We all know that AI doubles every 2 years, and right now just this real product market fit on the side of, for sure, the triaging, troubleshooting, work order creation part is just really humming for people, and the vendor piece is doing really, really well. So if you're curious, I'm sure this is going to be one of those podcasts that people send around. I'm sure our sales team is going to forward this to folks. So would love to have you take a look at this thing and take this framework from Bill, right? Like, treat this thing as an employee, go really deep with it for 2 weeks, then kind of just like look over it for a month. And what Bill has been sending me these days is text messages saying, hey, last week was a 97% automation week, right? Like 97% of his maintenance work orders were coordinated end to end through AI. And I'm sure we can get you there too. All right. Like, it might take a little bit more work, but this is the way to future-proof your company. So wherever you're at in the journey of AI, take the next step. Go to vendoroo.ai. If you are in pipeline for us, just like take to heart this stuff that Bill is doing, and can't wait to have you on the podcast talking about how you're a maintenance czar and stuff like that. All right. So going back to this like moment from like overprotective dad, making sure that the kid isn't going to trip and fall at any moment, to like, all right, go play and come back to me with a bruise. It sounds like what I heard was over 2 weeks, every single work order, like looking in, your PMS and looking in Vendoroo and filling in gaps. Post 2 weeks, it went down to 20% of work orders, 30% of work orders. Did you then just kind of like spot check, or was it a when there's an issue I look?
I would spot check. Like I think I would just, it was more idle, like curiosity than anything. Like I just wanted to see how the processes were playing out, go in and read like the chats that the Vendoroo is having with the tenants to know, the types of discussions and things that are being asked, like what kind of information are they looking for? So that way, I just wanted to know because if you want to turn a blind eye, well then and I get the two different types of AI mixed up, agentic versus cognitive, I think it is. But it's not that I turn a blind eye, it's that I have to give Vendoroo the opportunity to make the mistake to be able to correct it. So it's like when you first start a new job, I don't you don't go in like I don't feel like you go in full bore like, hey, this is me and this is who I am. You kind of spend the first, portion, whatever timeline you have. I have a 30, 60, 90 day from being in retail where you're ready for 30 days, you're thinking 60 days, or you're prepping for 60 days and you're planning for 90 days. So the idea is like the first 30 days I'm in a new role, a new job, like I'm learning that job and how people interact with that particular role. And that's kind of what I felt like I was doing with Vendoroo, where it was like I was learning Vendoroo while Vendoroo was learning me. We got comfortable with each other and we said, okay, let's be ourselves now. Vendoroo, you've got this, but I'm going to be watching and I'm not going to be hawking over you, but I will check in from time to time just to make sure everything's moving in the directions we want to move it in. If there's a hang up, I want to be able to correct that hang up and show you how to correct that hang up. And that's what I felt like the next month or so was just, okay, you're hung up on this idea. Let's see how we can work this. Here's a couple suggestions and we can try them out, or if you want me to, I'll make the decision.
Dude, what was that? Was that a conversation with someone that you had where that got triggered? Like, how did you get to that? Like, the feeling of being able to be like, let's go through this period together. Like, how was that? How did you get to that point?
Well, it goes back to the idea that, the vendor is the last hire we'll make. Like, I didn't look at it as a computer program. I looked at it as an employee. Like, I am managing Vendoroo. I'm managing it for Happy Homes property managers in a way that is reflective of what Happy Homes wants to represent. So I had to not think of it as this digital creation, but rather as a human being. And I like one of the things that as I've been researching AI is just have a conversation with the AI, see what happens. You don't know what's going to happen until you try. So like I think I spent like a 3-hour block one day just having a conversation with Gemini, because that's the AI research assistant that we use at the moment because we're signed up through Google. And I just had a conversation back and forth. What do you think about this, Gemini? Or is it cool if I call you Gemini? Like just random questions just to understand like the thought process behind it. And that's kind of what I've been encouraging the management team at Happy Homes to do with Hannah, which is what we call our receptionist, is have a conversation with her. Talk to her like she's a person. Don't talk to her like it's a press 1 for this, press 2 for that situation. Have an interactive conversation and get to know what the capabilities are and the capacities are to be able to effectively use it. If you just treat it like it's a computer program, you'll never really know what's going to happen. And it's like the YouTube algorithm, and I bring it up. It's like the whole idea of the Blockbuster, what happened to Blockbuster, where to go. Like for me, YouTube is the example for artificial intelligence at this point. When YouTube first came on the scene, you were typing everything in. You were hunting and searching for everything, but that algorithm was set up to remember and keep track of what you were interested in to start to make those suggestions for you to be able to like, hey, I like to listen to Pink Floyd. So here's Pink Floyd videos, and then here's some bands that are similar to Pink Floyd that you might also be interested in. So here's here's some other listenings that you may want. And yes, I am a Pink Floyd fan, but that's kind of the idea behind it. You had to teach that algorithm what you wanted. It's no different than an employee where I've got to teach an employee what I want. What is my standard? If you don't approach it that way, you won't teach the standard to Vendoroo. You won't teach it to Hannah or receptionist. It's just going to go with what information is there for it. Like as human beings, we gather information by reading, exploring, researching, talking to people. The AI is no different. It's going to gather information through the conversations, through feeding it information, through going through situations. And that 2 week period was just about me finding out what Vendoroo was capable of, and then finding out where it might go or how it might go, and directing it in a way that allowed it to learn and grow from that spot every time.
Dumb question. You were just in the PM room chatting, saying, "Hey, what about this? What about that?"
Yeah.
Sometimes asking questions like, "What were you asking me questions like? Why did you do this?" Or were you asking questions like, "What would happen if I would have told you to do it this way or whatnot?" Or were you saying like, "No, don't do that. Do this."
I was asking the questions like, what was the thought? Like, why are we going with this particular vendor here? Or, what was the thinking here in this situation to understand like how we were going in the directions that we were going? Or did we consider potentially going this route with it as well, just to see, like, just to put that idea out there, so that way it's like, okay, look, yes, you've got this rule book, or this book of information that you have, but we need to take that information, and basically what I was trying to do is I was trying to teach Vendoroo the gray area. We all want to say the world's black and white, but it's gray. There are shades of gray everywhere, and I'm not talking about the book. I'm just talking about the fact that there are different things that you can do where, like pulling the card for Carter's handyman service to go out to do HVAC. Like I just knew that guy, like how he described his business was he wanted to be a one-stop shop contractor, meaning he does it all: plumbing, electrical, drywall, cabinetry, all of it. So it's like, okay, I know this guy does a lot, so let me ask him. Let me have that conversation with him to say, hey, is this something that is inside your wheelhouse, or is this outside of something you can do? And getting Vendor to kind of understand that it is okay to stray from the written rules, because in between those rules are the spaces where we're going to make a difference. And by pulling that card for Carter's handyman service, I made that tenant extremely happy, so much so that he called my boss Ron and was like, man, that was amazing what your guy did.
Bill, do you feel like when you hire someone, you usually go through an interview process and then you build some trust there. And then you go from going through an onboarding process, and you try to evaluate what questions they ask and how they're thinking about things. And then you start watching how they perform afterward, and you're constantly trying to see how much you can trust that person more and more. Do you think you went through that process with the AI, or do you think, you may have skipped the interview process and then you were doing interview questions after you had, Hannah? Did you start, if you were to compare that with a human, did you start doing more interview questions post that when you had Hannah, and you're trying to like bundle all of that together now, doing the interview questions, doing the onboarding questions to build that trust up? Do you think, like, how do you think about that? And how do you think that experience could have been different or should have been different if you had
So the way I looked at, bringing Vendoroo on and then even Hannah on at this point is like that they had interviewed at that point. Like the research that I went into to find the various companies that were offering services similar to what you guys have, like that, to me, that was the interview process. And it was about, seeing what you guys had to offer, what these other companies had to offer. But then, being involved in the virtual seminars to hear other people's opinions, or to find out other user end experiences, to know that, yeah, if you just want, somebody that's going to answer the call and then tell you about it, this is what you want to go with. If you want to have somebody that's going to manage it start to finish and you don't ever touch it, this is what you want to go with. But if you want to keep it in house the way we like to keep it, then you're going to probably be more inclined to go with this. That to me, that was the interview process. And through conversation with Ron, and then with Dotan, Juan, and Nick, it was about finding out like their passion behind the project. If you are talking to people that are not really that excited about what they're selling, are you going to buy it? Or are you going to buy it from somebody that's like, yeah, this is where we're going. We're here now. and we've got these other products lined up. And the same concept of, I like one-stop vendors to be able to limit how much I disrupt a tenant. Like, I don't want to have to send in 4 vendors to fix one issue. I got a plumber coming out, they're going to cut a hole in drywall, they're going to fix the pipe underneath the toilet, but then I'm going to have to fix the drywall, then I'm going to have to paint the drywall, then I'm going to have to do this. I want somebody that can go in, fix the hole, or fix the pipe, fix the hole, paint the wall, and be done. So that way that tenant isn't waiting for that to be finished. With you guys, when I started doing the research on it, like, I think Receptionist was in its inception at that point. And then when Ron was at Broker Owner in Colorado, that's when he really got to play with, that's when he met Juan and he played with Receptionist there, Lisa, and was able to see what was coming. And that got him jazzed up. And I was already excited about it because I knew about it. I knew about what is it, Lisi Roo, and Resi Roo. I'm excited about what you guys have to offer. And I see that in the team that you have as well. So that was the interview process. And then as I brought in, as we went live with them, with Vendoroo and with Receptionist, it was like, to me, an interview is nothing more than me selling you on my company and you selling yourself to my company. Like, it's a sales game. You're going to try and present your best. But what I want to know is how you are at your worst. And I will never know that unless I take the chance, hire you, and let you go. I want to know what the worst mistake is you're going to make, and is it fixable? If it's not fixable, we may not be the right fit. But if it is fixable, then we can learn and we can
Bill,
grow from here.
where did you learn that, man? What point of your career like is this stuff that you learned at Lowe's through like their formation of like how to become a leader? Is this stuff you learned in sports? Like how did you learn this ability of like, you're never going to be able to get it right the first time. You got to be able to like trust, let go, and then correct, as opposed to I want it my way right now.
I think that's something I developed through sports as a kid because I remember I played soccer all my life and I was a goalkeeper, so I had to learn how to, like, it sounds silly, but I had to learn how to fall appropriately. Making a save, I had to learn that specific trait of how to fall in a way that wouldn't cause me pain, and it took me 2-3 months of learning, but I had to fall. You don't learn how to fall without falling, and you don't learn how to fall to not get hurt without getting hurt. But you still got to be able to get yourself back up. And that's what I see with the process now with Vendoroo. And that's the approach I take is, okay, you want me to trust you? You're going to get a little bit of trust and we're going to work through this. And I'm going to see what happens when these things happen, when something goes sideways on you. How are you going to handle it? I think you and I talked about this, Pablo, and I talked about how, when LeBron walked off the court, when he was with the Cavaliers, the first time he went to the finals, he just walked off the court. And that bothered me because it's like, man, be gracious in victory, but also be gracious in defeat. How you respond to things not going right is, to me, more important than how you respond when things do go right. Because
How's it? Do you adapt that to the AI, or do you adapt that to our team when something goes wrong? Like, is there a difference in your mind of the AI responding to something when things are bad, and how bad it can respond versus like Nick responding to you when you need him or something like that? Like, is there a like? Can you
no,
talk?
no, I look at you guys as like when I talk Vendoroo, like, I'm talking about everybody, the AI, the people supporting, the people building the programs, Dotan, Tyler, Juan, Nick, like, it's all of you guys. You guys are all Vendoroo. Like, even you, Pablo. Like, it's like, okay, like that, knowing that you guys have that insider knowledge. Like, when I talk to you and I'm like, hey, this thing is starting to, like, I noticed one of the things I noticed early on was that Vendoroo wasn't, they would reach out to a vendor, but then not assign the vendor to the work order. Well, our vendors will never see that work order unless we assign them to the work order. So it's like, okay, look, you're doing great figuring out who to go to, but what I need to see happen is, rather than wait for a vendor to confirm it, if you have a vendor picked out that you want to go with, assign it to them and allow them the opportunity to say whether or not it is within their capacity to get done or not. Don't make that decision for them. That's their decision to make. Let them make it. And as soon as that started happening, we went from, like, I think 7-8 days on work orders down to like 4 days, because instead of waiting for a vendor to get back to them or trying to figure out, like, because like I think most of my vendors they were reaching out to me saying, hey, where's this work order at? I'm giving them the information, not realizing that they hadn't been assigned yet. And then when I started to see that, it was like, okay, let's assign the vendor and they'll roll. And we don't have, like, at that point, you're good. All you need to do is follow up communication at that point.
Bill, obviously you are what we define as a visionary. I think we all identify with how you view life and our approach. But if you're thinking about again like other companies that are more pragmatic or conservative, what do you think is still missing in how Vendoroo operates or what the Vendoroo offers for those people? Because you taking that leap of faith, but I don't know if they would. So what is this still missing for them to feel comfortable taking that path?
In my mind, what keeps people from wanting to take that step or to take that to provide to put that leap of faith in is just simply the fear of the unknown. Like AI is like and honestly that's why I started talking about, like I started thinking about the YouTube algorithm, because I mean if we wanted to get granular about what artificial intelligence is, it's a learning algorithm, no different than YouTube, no different than your Google search bar, no different than any search engine you're going to use. As you ask it questions, it's going to remember and it's going to start to key off of things that you search a lot. How do I train my German Shepherd? What's the greatest rap group of all time? What's the best place in San Francisco to go to dinner? You know, things like that. It's going to start to key off of those things. Like I think when I opened up my phone when Pablo was in Charleston, he saw that like I had like the top three things on my Google feed were about English Premier League transfer window, and it was like, oh, I see you're a soccer fan. Yeah, I am. I want to know who we're going to get. I'm curious as who they're exploring. It's getting people to stop thinking about like AI in the sense that, you know, you're talking about Skynet, where the Terminator is suddenly going to take over the world, or the Matrix, or you know these Hollywood horrors that people are buying into. Like it's similar to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, where we hear this radio program, but nobody bothered to look out the window to see that the sky was not falling. People were panicked because of it. They thought it was real. That's where we are with AI. AI is not going to replace the human ability to think outside of the box. We can teach it how to do it, but it will never, ever be able to do it the way we do it because of the way our brains are wired. And it's not going to eliminate humans from being involved in it in some capacity. You know, that's the way I've approached this the whole time, is that yeah, it would be great for me not to have to be able to look at work orders at all. But that's not the world we're ever going to be in. It's not going to be set up that way unless, you know, long after I'm in the ground, that change happens. But it's just getting them to understand that this is bringing Vendoroo on is no different than hiring somebody for, you know, 15 bucks an hour to do this job. It's 15 bucks an hour to answer a phone every time it rings. Would you rather have a program that you can teach, train, that won't have a bad day, that won't be sick, that doesn't have issues going on at home, or didn't get a flat tire on the way to work today? Or do you want to have that employee that might show up 15 minutes late all the time and you don't want to do anything about it because they're a nice person?
Bill, you kind of touched on this and how you hire, like interview and hire people, but on your team, I'm curious, like, have you experienced resistance from your team when
Yes.
you brought, and how did you navigate that?
So when the company actually used Vendoroo back in 2024 before I was with the company, and it didn't go over very well because they had one person doing operations, accounting, and maintenance, and it was a lot for one person. So everybody at the company has that memory, and they know that it was not that successful because the person didn't have the time to devote. So when I started talking Vendoroo again and I saw the eye rolls, I started asking questions. Well, why are you rolling your eyes? Well, you weren't here when Vendoroo was here before. You didn't know what it was like. Well, I know. I want to know why. Why are you upset at the idea of this coming back? It's not like, from what I'm hearing, it's not the same as what it was 6 months ago, a year ago. What are your no's? Why are you telling me no? Why are you shaking your head no? Let me into this. That way I can ask these questions as I'm interviewing Vendoroo to find out, are these still issues, or is there a workaround, or maybe we went with the full suite when we shouldn't have gone with the full suite. situation where we just want Vendoroo handling the triage. What was the issue that caused the major problems? And once I got past those no's, the next thought was, well, great, who's gonna work with it? And I was like, I'm here. That's why it's going to be successful. I'm going to teach it. I'm going to treat it as though I've hired somebody to do this. And I'm going to show it exactly what I'm doing. So that way, as we move forward, if there's a question or concern with Vendoroo, you don't have to try and reach somebody at Vendoroo. I'm Vendoroo's manager. Come to me with the question. Let me find out the answer and I'll come back to you. And it may just be a simple matter of me going into the maintenance notes, the maintenance book, and correcting the issue myself. And, Tyler and Juan have shown me how to do lots of things in there. And it's awesome. Like it is great. It is literally like, I mean, I don't, it's almost like brain surgery, really, where you're going in and you're changing the way one thing is written. And suddenly now we're getting the answers we're looking for, or we're getting the results we're looking for. And, everybody that was hesitant about it in the beginning, they're now like, man, it's really helping out, isn't it? And yes, it is. And now we're stepping into the world of receptionist where we're not going to, thank you for calling Happy Homes. This is Bill. How may I help you? We're going to have that option out there now where the questions we get are the questions that we should be answering, not the ones of, oh, you want to fill out what takes 2 to 3 days for your application to be approved. We're not going to answer that question anymore. We're not going to answer the basics. We're going to have that $15 an hour employee that can do it and much more.
How did we do, and it sounds like you got support, but how did we do in supporting you with your staff specifically in kind of getting them over this hurdle or obstacle? Or could we have done anything better either on the sales side or on the support side?
So the way my team approached it was more from the sense of, it was like, okay, well, this is going to be your issue to deal with if it goes sideways, Bill. And I basically said, okay, no problem. I'm okay with that. Like I had a conversation with Ron somewhere in February, March. We have a weekly call. And I just asked him, I'm like, did you hire me because of what I know, or did you hire me because I'm willing to be disruptive? And he flat out told me he hired me because I was willing to be disruptive, and it's like, okay, if what at the time there were 4 of us in the office most days, 3 out of 4 were saying no to Vendoroo. I was the only yes. And I was like, well, this is ultimately my decision to make, and we're going to go. We're going to give it a shot because I see the value here and I'm willing to take this risk. It is not it's not a complete, shot in the dark. It is absolutely based off of the research that I've done. And like, I even offered to let them sit in on calls. I offered to let them look at what I was reading. Look, here's the information I have. I have a notebook full of notes from the process where it was like, this is what is being offered by the various companies. And if I want to stop here, which is not where I want to stop, I want to move forward. Like everything is about change. And we're at the cusp of a major change within property management. And do you want to be jumping on at the last second as the boat leaves the dock, or do you want to have a seat at the bow so that way as you go across the river, you've got the wind, the fresh air in your face, and you're feeling the exhilaration of that moment? And I don't want to be sitting on the back of the boat, smelling the gas from the engine. I want to be up front with the fresh air, feeling the breeze as we go across the water, knowing that we are crossing uncharted waters into an area where this is where we're going to live. We're going to be here from now on, and we're going to be moving forward from this point. I mean, there are so many different examples of this throughout the history of humankind where you have a moment where you either know to jump or you are too afraid to jump. And quite frankly, there have been some moments in my life that I'm still kicking myself about because I didn't take that jump. And I see I don't want to call it an AI revolution, but I want to call it an AI adaptation in the sense that we're adapting AI into our everyday life. In the car yesterday, as we were moving from one office to another, Ron just blurted out, "Okay, Google," and my phone started talking through the radio on the car. And it was like, "Whoa, what's going on? Your car's talking to you." And I'm like, well, no, that's the phone. But we're in that world now where you can just blurt out in almost any room. Like I would almost imagine there are at least a couple iPhones in the room. If I were to shout out, "Okay, Siri," 3 or 4 phones are going to start chirping. That's the world we live in. So do you want to still be sitting in a chair with a flip phone, or do you want to be a part of what's taking place now? and what's going to take place in the future.
Speaking about the future, we are fortunate to have you as a client, and maybe we will be fortunate to have you in a year or two here as part of the team. But
He thought he was getting a ticket to San Francisco.
I was like, I was like, can my wife come?
Time, man. Yeah, dude. I think you're going to be a star in our solar system, right? So really appreciate your time and appreciate all the stuff. I'm gonna ask a lot of you, Bill. So I hope that you know that we know that comes with providing extreme value to you first.
Right.
So thanks for taking this time, man. Really,
Yeah,
really
man.
well.
Like,
Questions not for us, by the way. This has been very selfish of us.
that's all right. I enjoy the conversations, and like, some of the things I see within, and I'm very visual. So one of the things I struggled with in the early stages of, making the decision, and, there's little bitty things here and there that you can play with to get a better idea of it. I don't think there was anything that would have. No other company offered the same things that you guys offer as far as what we were looking for. We weren't looking for somebody to come in and say, we're going to be the perfect answer for maintenance for you. We were looking for somebody that was going to say, we're going to be a good partner. And I think that is, one of the things that, it can't be stressed enough is the support that's going to go behind it. The Juan and I met weekly for about two months. Every Thursday we would have a conversation about what we were seeing, and knowing that at any point I could reach out to Juan. I would love to see more training as far as getting Vendoroo up and running. I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Sometimes that's a good way to go, especially like if that's your style. I like structure, but at the same time, I also really enjoy winging it, just because you're in an arena that is brand new. So I grasp that, at this point, yeah, it would be nice to be able to, here's your training module to go through before you start launching Vendoroo or, what have you. But I definitely think a training module of some sort for clients would be good to be able to assist in that adaptation of Vendoroo into their day-to-days. Or even, if you've got people that are willing to have conversations as you bring, like somebody like end user, to be able to talk to a new end user to say, hey, these are some of the issues that I struggled with. Like I think there's a guy from Memphis that was on one of the calls I was on. I can't remember his name, but he's got like 10,000 doors. And he was like, yeah, Vendoroo is great. And I was like, man, I want to talk to you. And I was never able to get connected with him because, he's got a ton of doors that he's got to deal with. But it was more just being able to pick someone's brain and say, all right, as you were doing these things, what did you encounter? Did you encounter this? Or, did you ever think about possibly doing that? Having that like a mentor almost as you're adopting Vendoroo would be highly beneficial outside of what you guys offer, just from the standpoint of, yes, Doton handles a lot of the programming and such. Tyler is good at, helping you navigate the menus and what have you. And Pablo is great at telling you how awesome it is. But like, you guys obviously have a vested interest, but if you're talking to somebody that is actually using it, like if you want to know about the iPhone 16, are you going to talk to an Apple person at the store, or are you going to talk to somebody that's got an iPhone 16 in their pocket? I'm talking to somebody that's got it in their pocket because they're using it, and they're going to be using it from pretty close to the same level that I'm going to use it. Not as an expert, but I've got this phone in my pocket because it's the latest and greatest, and I was due up for an upgrade.
The Mentoroo program.
There you go, Mentoroo. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, man, that's good stuff. Anything else? Anything else that we're that you need right now?
No, I don't think. I think that would be just the biggest thing. Is just, it's like my wife started when my wife started the job she's in now. Like I told her, she was like, what do I do? Like, how do I handle things? I'm like, well, you got to find a battle buddy. And she's like, a battle buddy. And I'm like, yeah, somebody that's going through the same stuff as you, or is just a little bit ahead of you in where you are in your growth within the company, that they can help with minor things to be able to answer questions that you might have that you're not comfortable asking your boss or whomever, but somebody that is in the same seat as you, just at a different point in time. And that battle buddy goes a long way to be able to just to bounce an idea off their head and say, hey, I wonder if I should maybe teach Vendoroo that in certain situations, we can pull the trigger faster by switching. Like you've got a leaky toilet, just go ahead and get a plumber on it. You don't need to know what's going on within the toilet. Most of the plumbers can fix a toilet within 30 minutes and they're still going to charge an hour anyway. Just put it on a plumber and let them deal with it from there. You don't need to know if it's the fill valve or the ball cock or the wax ring underneath the toilet. They're going to figure that out really quickly once they're on site. You can get that tenant taken care of and you can move on to the major issues as far as like, okay, well, here's an HVAC that's blown and I need to get 2 estimates because I know this owner's going to want 2 estimates. And you can start to move on the major problems as far as instead of the minor problems. And that's what Vendoroo has allowed me to do. And that's what I'm in the process of teaching Vendoroo now is on the minor issues, let's just get them handled and move on to the ones that are going to be your big dollar events, the ones that make property owners cringe.
Awesome, dude. Appreciate you making time for us on a Saturday, man.
Yeah,
Let's
man,
go.
no problem.